This is going to be a wild ride, folks. Buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is going to shock you to your core. Before I dive into the heart-wrenching truth, I just want to say thank you for being here, for listening as I pour out my soul. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I absolutely love connecting with all of you. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It means more to me than you can imagine and helps keep this channel going. And if you have a story you need to share, feel free to email me. I'll put my address in the comments and description. Now, let me tell you the chilling reality of what truly happened. Mother's Day, a day that once shimmered with joy and anticipation, used to be my absolute favorite holiday. It wasn't about the sappy cards or the overpriced bouquets. It was the one sacred day a year when my family actually saw me, before I faded into the background noise of their busy lives. When my son, Ethan, was a little guy, he'd burst into my room, beaming, with breakfast on a tray, usually burnt toast and lopsided scrambled eggs, and construction paper hearts, cut with clumsy toddler hands, taped to a paper plate. My daughter, Olivia, when she was just a tiny tot, would gather wild daisies from our backyard, their petals often missing, stems bent from her fierce grip, and present them like precious jewels. Those were the days when our house echoed with laughter and felt like a true home. This morning, the silence was deafening, a heavy blanket suffocating the air. I woke at the crack of dawn, meticulously made my bed, and even donned my favorite Sunday blouse, just in case they decided to grace me with their presence. I went all out, setting the table with the good china, the delicate porcelain with tiny blue roses that only saw the light of day twice a year. The night before, I'd baked a perfect lemon pound cake, letting it cool under a pristine mesh dome, just as my own mother, bless her soul, had taught me. I kept whispering to myself, maybe they're coming later. Maybe brunch just turned into lunch, or lunch into dinner. I was determined not to surrender to despair before noon. By 11, a fresh pot of tea was brewing, its aromatic steam filling the quiet kitchen. I carefully laid out crisp linen napkins, sliced the cake into flawless pieces, and arranged 3 on the elegant serving tray. 1 for me, 1 for Ethan, and 1 for Olivia. I didn't even bother with a 4th for Brittany, Ethan's wife. I knew better than to expect her. I tried calling Ethan once, just to confirm, just to hear his voice. The phone rang 5 agonizing times before his voicemail clicked on. I didn't leave a message. He knew what day it was. I wasn't going to beg for a crumb of their attention. By 2 p.m., my hope had dwindled to a flicker. I finally gave up my lonely vigil at the dining table and carried my untouched plate into the living room. I settled into my favorite armchair, facing the window, a silent observer to the vibrant parade of neighbors. They came and went, laden with balloons and brightly wrapped gift bags, their cars overflowing with plastic containers of what I imagined was savory potato salad. I watched Mrs. Henderson's daughter, Jessica, pull into the driveway across the street, carrying a bouquet of flowers so massive it seemed to dwarf her entire torso. She was even wearing heels. That's how you knew she truly respected her mother. My gaze fell upon my tea, now lukewarm and uninviting. I tried to rationalize, maybe there's traffic. Maybe they had a last-minute emergency. Or maybe, just maybe, they simply forgot. No. Brittany would never let them forget. That woman runs their household with the cold precision of a courtroom. If anything, this was deliberate. I ate my cake in stony silence, each bite a quiet act of defiance. I refused to cry. I would not shed a single tear over being invisible, not today. I've lived long enough to understand that there comes a point when you are no longer the sun around which your children's world revolves. You become background noise. The profound love you once poured into them, it's something they eventually outgrow. But I clung to my dignity, gripping that fork like it was a scepter, eating every morsel as if it were served in a Michelin-starred restaurant. Around 4 p.m., a sudden knock at the door shattered the quiet. My heart leaped into my throat. For a fleeting moment, a desperate hope surged through me. Maybe they had come after all. Maybe Olivia had pleaded with her father, and Ethan, with his soft spot for his daughter, had finally given in. I smoothed my blouse, brushed imaginary crumbs from my lap, and walked to the door with slow, deliberate steps, feigning a calm I didn't feel, pretending I wasn't holding my breath. When I finally opened it, it wasn't Ethan. It was a young man in a crisp brown delivery jacket, holding a large catering bag in one hand and a crisp white envelope in the other. "Delivery for Carter," he stated, his voice flat. I blinked, confused. "That's me," I managed to say. "Great. This was scheduled for today. I was running a bit behind, sorry about that. Here's the food, and this came with it." He handed me the warm bag and the envelope. My mind raced. Perhaps Ethan had ordered food as a surprise? He'd done something similar once before, sending a pie when Olivia had the flu and couldn't visit. Maybe this was his way of trying to make amends for his absence. "Enjoy, ma'am," the young man said, then turned and walked back to his car, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. I carried the bag into the kitchen and set it on the counter. The rich aroma hit me first: stuffed chicken breasts, creamy mashed potatoes, perfectly steamed asparagus. My stomach, despite everything, rumbled in protest. I opened the bag and found several containers, all neatly labeled for 3 people. A small, sad smile touched my lips. Maybe this was their peace offering, a small one, but a gesture nonetheless. Then, I opened the envelope. That's when my world stopped. It wasn't a greeting card. It wasn't a belated message from Ethan or Olivia, or even Brittany. It was a formal letterhead from a high-end retirement facility, the kind with luxurious spa packages, gleaming wood floors, and serene walking trails. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a clerical error. But then, my eyes landed on the details: "Welcome to your future residence at Morning Grove Retirement Living." Below that, my name, Mildred Carter. And below that, my son's email address, ethan.carter@gmail.com. The form chillingly detailed a confirmed move-in date. It listed my known allergies, my medications, and a preferred payment method, a payment method linked directly to my checking account. My account. My legs went numb. I gripped the cold countertop, fighting to stay upright. I read it again, slower this time. This wasn't a brochure. This wasn't a suggestion. This was a finalized welcome packet, a horrifying confirmation. I wasn't just being forgotten, I was being removed. My son, my own flesh and blood, had submitted the paperwork. My daughter-in-law must have helped him. He planned to send me away, quietly, without asking, without warning. While I sat alone on Mother's Day, waiting, they were finalizing my disappearance. I stood there for what felt like an hour, staring at that letter, my knees locked, my hands frozen to the countertop. My name, my medical details, my bank account, all printed out in neat, sterile rows, as if I were a piece of furniture being relocated, not a mother, not a human being, just a problem to be quietly solved. My trembling hands picked up the catering bag again. I pulled out the packing slip taped to the side. It confirmed the order: 3 plates. 1 for Ethan, 1 for Brittany, 1 for her mother. Not me. I wasn't even an afterthought. I looked back at the retirement home letter. There was a small sticky note attached at the top. It was handwritten, in Brittany's sharp, rushed script: "Here's the packet for Ethan to sign. Once it's official, she'll be out before summer." Thank God. I couldn't breathe. That note wasn't meant for me. It wasn't meant for anyone who cared about me. It was meant for the man I raised and the woman I tried so hard to get along with. And it landed in my hands by sheer, unadulterated accident. A single, clumsy twist of fate. One delivery driver, handing the wrong envelope to the wrong woman. Or perhaps, the right one. I sank into my kitchen chair. The house was silent, but it felt deafening now. My own heartbeat pounded in my ears. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like a menacing warning. For so long, I'd ignored the subtle signs. The way Brittany would talk over me during dinner. The way Ethan stopped calling unless he needed something. The way they subtly discouraged Olivia from spending too much time here. It all made a sickening sense now. They weren't waiting for me to get sick. They were planning around it. I remembered a conversation from last fall, Ethan asking if I'd updated my will, suggesting we streamline my finances. At the time, I foolishly thought he was just being responsible. I even thanked him for looking out for me. I didn't know he was looking to take over. And Brittany, she always hated this house. Said it was too old, too cluttered, not good resale material. I should have known when she offered to help me declutter last Christmas that she was really sizing it up for liquidation. I stood, my resolve hardening, and walked into the hallway, heading straight for the linen closet where I kept my fireproof box. I opened it and pulled out my financial folder, brimming with bank records, property deeds, insurance policies. My fingers flipped through the documents until I found the account number listed on the retirement packet. There it was, my checking account. I'd given Ethan access 5 years ago, when I had surgery on my hip. Just in case of emergencies, I'd told myself. Just in case. He must have used that to initiate the deposit for the home. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that he was doing it, or that he was doing it behind my back. Not even the decency to sit me down and pretend it was for my own good. They were going to spring it on me like a twisted birthday gift. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. You're being evicted from your life. The kettle on the stove began to whistle shrilly. I hadn't even realized I'd turned the burner on. I shut it off and poured myself a cup, more for the motion than any comfort. I didn't drink it. Instead, I walked to the living room and sat down on the couch. The very same couch where Ethan used to lie, his head in my lap, when he had fevers. Where Olivia once curled up, mesmerized by my stories of when I was a girl. Where I sat and waited, every year, for someone, anyone, to remember that I mattered. I placed the ominous envelope beside me. Then, with a newfound clarity, I picked up the phone. I called Ethan. It rang 4 times before he picked up. His voice was casual, almost dismissive. Hey, Ma. Sorry I didn't call earlier. Been a busy day. How are you? Busy, of course. I'm fine, I said, my voice quiet, surprisingly steady. Just had some unexpected mail delivered. There was a pregnant pause, then a distinct shift in his tone. Oh. What kind of mail? A welcome packet, I said, my gaze fixed on the damning document beside me. From Morning Grove Retirement Living. Silence. I believe it was meant for you, but the delivery driver gave it to me. More silence. I could hear his shallow breathing. Then came a fumbling noise, as if he was covering the mouthpiece, followed by a muffled, frantic whisper, "She knows." I waited, letting the silence stretch. Look, Ma, he finally stammered, his voice laced with a false sincerity, we were going to talk to you about that. No, Ethan, you weren't. My voice gained strength. You were just trying to figure out the best way to help. Brittany thought, Brittany doesn't know me, and you clearly don't either. His voice cracked, just slightly. It's not like that. I stood slowly, holding the phone in one hand, the envelope in the other. You sent me food like I was a stray dog. You canceled Mother's Day. You took my money, and now you're making plans to remove me from the home your father and I built. The home I let you grow up in. He sighed, a sound of exasperated impatience. You're making this dramatic. No, I said, my voice cutting through his feeble excuse. I'm seeing it clearly for the first time in a long time. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, with chilling calm, don't come here again. I'll make arrangements myself. And I hung up. My hands were steady, my resolve unwavering. I looked around my home, the walls that had witnessed decades of my life, and I made a decision. I was not going to be erased quietly. The phone didn't ring again that night. Ethan didn't call back. No apologetic texts, no explanations, nothing. I suppose once you've been exposed, there's not much left to say, unless it comes with shame or decency. And my son, it seemed, possessed neither. After I hung up, I just sat there for a long, long time. The welcome packet lay beside me on the couch like a coiled snake that had slithered into my house without warning. The more I stared at it, the clearer everything became. This wasn't a decision made overnight. This was a plan. A quiet, coordinated betrayal, hidden beneath polite smiles and conveniently missed phone calls. While I knitted blankets and baked lemon cakes and watched the mailbox for holiday cards, they were counting down the days until I could be tucked away, labeled, and stored somewhere with emergency buttons, schedule boards, and soft rooms meant for fading women. Well, I was not fading, and I would not be stored. The next morning, I rose early. I didn't cry. I didn't waste time asking why. I packed away the cake, tossed the tea, and went straight to my file cabinet. There were still a few things I had left untouched. Things Ethan didn't have access to. My lawyer's number was one of them. I called her before I even had breakfast. Michelle Dillard. We went to high school together, back in 1966. She'd gone off to college, then law school, and now had her own small, thriving practice not far from here. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but she picked up on the second ring, as if we were still sitting next to each other in history class. Millie Carter, she said, her voice warm and familiar. Haven't heard from you in too long. What's going on? I need to change my will, I said. Today. She didn't ask why. Just told me she'd be by that afternoon. By noon, Michelle was in my living room with her worn leather briefcase and a stack of fresh papers. I poured her coffee and told her everything, what Ethan had done, the nursing home, the financial betrayal, all of it. She didn't blink. That's elder fraud, she stated, her voice sharp and precise. You want to file a claim? No, I said, my resolve ironclad. I want to make sure he never touches another dime of my money again, and I want the house safe. We spent 2 hours poring over my documents. I updated my will. I revoked his power of attorney. I changed the name on all my accounts to a living trust, with Michelle as co-executive. I transferred ownership of the house into the trust and had Michelle notarize it all. It felt like sealing bricks over a door someone else had tried to sneak through. When we finished, she looked at me with those sharp lawyer's eyes and asked, "Do you want him to know?" I shook my head. Not yet. Why? She pressed. Because I'm not done watching them reveal themselves. Later that day, I heard from Olivia, my granddaughter. 17, soft-spoken, always watching, always listening. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since Christmas, when she sat next to me during dinner and didn't say a word. I'd assumed Brittany had gotten to her too, that maybe she'd been told to keep her distance. But now, she was calling me. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "Grandma, are you okay?" I took a breath, my heart aching. "Why do you ask, baby?" There was a pause. Dad and Mom were arguing. I overheard something about you being mad about a delivery. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to ask her if she knew. If she had been part of it. But I stopped myself. Olivia wasn't like them. She still had her own heart. "I found something they didn't want me to see," I said, my voice gentle. "And I think I found out the truth about how they see me." She didn't say anything, but then she whispered, "I think I already knew." That's when I felt something crack inside me. Not pain, but a profound relief. Someone in that house still had a conscience. "I want to come see you," Olivia said. "Whenever you're ready," I told her. "The door's open, but just you." "All right?" "Okay." She showed up 2 days later. She'd grown taller. Her hair was longer. She looked like a woman and a child at once, her eyes full of guilt and something else too, resolve. She sat on the same couch where the welcome packet had landed days earlier. She looked at the coffee table and saw the envelope, still there, a silent testament to the betrayal. "I heard Mom say you were overreacting," she said, her voice barely a whisper. But I knew it wasn't nothing. I handed her the papers. She read them slowly, her eyes scanning each damning word. When she finished, her hands were trembling. "She lied to me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They both did." I didn't respond. I just watched her process it all. "Grandma," she said finally, her voice firm, "what are you going to do?" "I've already done it," I told her. "I changed everything. They can't touch anything now. Not the house, not the money, not me." She looked relieved, then ashamed. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner," she whispered. "I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how to help." "You helped just now," I said, reaching for her hand. We sat in silence for a while. Then I made her tea. We drank it together, like nothing had changed, except everything had. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Because I wasn't helpless. I wasn't forgotten. And the house they wanted to steal, it still had its owner, me. It's strange how a home can feel entirely different once you stop being afraid of losing it. The walls hadn't changed. The furniture hadn't moved. But everything in me had shifted. After Olivia left that evening, I walked from room to room in the quiet, pausing in doorways, touching the trim, the wallpaper, the very edges of my life. I'd spent 46 years in this house. I'd laughed in it, grieved in it, grown old in it. And for a brief, terrifying moment, I'd let myself believe someone could just come in and take it from me. Not anymore. The next day, I stood out on the porch with my tea and watched the neighborhood wake up. Mr. Johnson across the street watered his tomato vines. A woman in a bright pink tracksuit walked her golden retriever past the mailbox. It was ordinary, but profoundly peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not for calls, not for explanations, not for the other shoe to drop. Then, I saw Brittany's SUV turn onto the street. It pulled up in front of my house and parked, as usual, too close to the curb. She stepped out in her cream blouse and heels, sunglasses perched like armor on her nose. She didn't have Olivia with her, just her purse and a paper folder in one hand. I didn't invite her in. She walked up the porch steps stiffly, her posture clearly rehearsed. She stopped just short of the door, probably surprised to see me standing there, calm and unmoved. "Mildred," she said, forcing a brittle smile. "Can we talk?" "You've got 3 minutes," I said, and took a slow sip of my tea. She cleared her throat. "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Ethan and I were only trying to do what's best for you. You forged my medical information and initiated a transfer to a facility without my consent," I replied, my voice steady. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a betrayal." Her smile didn't falter, but her neck flushed a furious red. "We thought we were helping." "No," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You thought you were getting rid of me." She held up the folder. "The home was beautiful. You would have had a private suite, a garden, weekly massages. We only wanted to give you comfort." I stared at her, my gaze unwavering. "You want to talk about comfort? Comfort is eating breakfast in your own kitchen. Comfort is choosing when you go outside, when you rest, when you speak. Comfort is freedom, not polished isolation." Her hand twitched. We didn't mean for it to feel like that." "Then why did I find out through a delivery mistake?" I asked, my voice piercing the fragile facade. Why wasn't I given the respect of a conversation? She had no answer. I let the silence stretch, heavy and accusatory. Finally, she broke it. "Look, Mildred, Ethan is upset. He said you locked him out of the accounts. Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "And the will, and the deed, and the trust. All of it." She blinked, truly stunned now. "You can't do that without telling him." "I can," I said, a flicker of triumph in my voice. "And I did. Because it's mine. And because I finally remembered who I was before your husband tried to make me feel like a burden." Brittany's mouth opened, then closed. She stepped back, as if ready to regroup. "I don't know what Olivia told you," she added, a hint of desperation in her tone. She didn't tell me anything, I said. I told her. Brittany's jaw tightened. She turned to go, then hesitated. You're going to regret this. No, I said, watching her carefully. But you might. She walked off my porch without another word. I watched her drive away, calm and sure. That afternoon, I called Michelle and had her draft a letter to Morning Grove, formally rejecting any and all arrangements made in my name. I sent copies to my primary physician and the state licensing board. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was leaving a paper trail. No one was ever going to use my age as a weapon again. 2 days later, Olivia came back. She brought me a bouquet of daffodils she'd picked from behind the school. She wore no makeup, no pretenses, and hugged me like she truly meant it. Mom's furious, she whispered into my shoulder. I know, I said. Let her be. We sat on the back patio together. She talked about college applications, about how her friends were all obsessed with phones and filters, and how no one seemed to care about anything real anymore. I told her about her grandfather, how he used to plant tomatoes in the yard and talk to them like they were children. How we once danced in the kitchen barefoot after losing half our money on a bad business loan. How I held Ethan when he had the croup so bad I thought he'd stop breathing. He wasn't always like this, I said softly, a pang of old grief in my chest. I know, Olivia replied, her voice tinged with sadness, but he is now. She told me she wanted to spend more time here, that something about this place made her feel grounded. I told her I'd always have space for her, that she didn't have to wait for a holiday to come home. She looked at me, eyes full of unshed tears, and said, "You're the only adult in my life who tells the truth." That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Ethan, not to Brittany. To myself. I wrote down everything I remembered about my life, my strength, my fears, my dreams. I wrote about the day I became a mother, the day I became a widow, the day I became forgotten, and the day I remembered myself again. Then I folded it and placed it in the top drawer beside my bed. Because if anyone ever tried to rewrite my story again, I wanted my version to be the one that survived. The next few days passed quietly, and for once, I welcomed the quiet. No more voicemails from Ethan. No surprise visits, no sneaky paperwork arriving at my door. Just me, my garden, my tea, and the profound peace that came from finally putting a stop to the storm they had been stirring behind my back. I tended to my azaleas that morning, humming a hymn I hadn't sung in years. The sun felt good on my skin, and the gentle breeze carried the sweet smell of freshly cut grass. I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about how free it felt to stand on my own porch and know, without a doubt, that it was still mine. Then I heard the car. It wasn't Brittany's SUV. It was Ethan's old sedan, the one I helped him buy years ago when he couldn't afford the down payment. It pulled into the driveway slowly, hesitantly, as if unsure of its welcome. He stepped out, looking smaller than I remembered. No expensive suit this time, no forced smile, just khakis, a wrinkled polo shirt, and the stark look of a man who finally realized his mother wasn't the fool he thought she was. I stood at the edge of the porch and waited. He walked up to the steps but didn't climb them. "Ma," he said, his voice quiet, almost pleading. "Can we talk?" "You've been talking for weeks, Ethan," I said, my voice flat. "Just not to me." He looked down at his shoes like a child caught with sticky fingers. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I really thought it was for the best." "No," I countered, "you thought it was easiest for you." He looked up, guilt plain on his face. "Brittany pushed it. You know how she gets. She said you were starting to forget things, that it wasn't safe for you to live alone." I raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. "What did I forget, Ethan? The PIN code I gave you access to? Or the will you never read but assumed would benefit you?" He didn't answer. "Don't blame your wife for the choices you signed your name to." I was scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "We've got the girls, the house, the bills. It's all so much." And I just thought maybe it was time to start thinking ahead. So you planned a future that didn't include me? I said, my voice cutting. Behind my back? He took a shaky breath. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. I brought this. I didn't move. It's a letter, he said. Not from me. From Olivia. That made me pause. I walked down 2 steps, took the envelope, and opened it right there in front of him. It was handwritten, no elaborate formatting, just raw, honest words. Dear Grandma. I know things have been awful lately, and I feel like I should have said something sooner. When I found out what they were planning, I didn't know how to speak up without them shutting me down. I was scared. But after I saw you last week, I wasn't scared anymore. You're the only one in this family who has ever made me feel seen. I don't care what they say. I know you're strong, and I know you're still sharp, and I know they were wrong to do what they did. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I want to spend more time with you if you'll have me. Love, Olivia. I folded the letter slowly and looked at Ethan. She's a better person than both of you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I know, he whispered, his eyes downcast. I nodded toward the driveway. You can go now. He looked like he wanted to argue, to plead, but he didn't. He turned and walked back to his car. When he drove away, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired of men who shrink when things get hard. Tired of women who smile while they bury you. Tired of pretending forgiveness is automatic. Back inside, I placed Olivia's letter in my drawer beside the one I wrote myself. I sat down, exhaled deeply, and closed my eyes. Later that afternoon, Michelle stopped by to finalize the last piece of paperwork. She handed me the new title for the house, now secured under my name alone, immune to any future power grabs. You did the right thing, she said, her voice approving. Most people would have ignored the signs until it was too late. I almost did, I replied, a chilling reminder. Until a stranger handed me the truth in a paper envelope. Michelle smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. Funny how fate works. Before she left, she asked me if I had any final wishes she should record, any legacy instructions beyond what we already covered. I nodded. I want Olivia to have the house when I go, I said, not because I owe it to her, but because she showed up, because she asked questions when the others just made decisions, and because she still knows how to love with her eyes open. Michelle wrote it down. Done. That night, I pulled out my recipe box, the one I hadn't opened in years. I flipped through the aged cards, covered in flour dust and little grease stains, chicken pot pie, buttermilk biscuits, lemon pound cake. I wrote a new one. Title, Olivia's First Dinner. Ingredients, 1 granddaughter, 1 kitchen, 1 memory that matters. I placed it on top, because from now on, I would cook for people who chose to stay, not those who plotted how to make me disappear. The following Sunday, Olivia came over with a tote bag and an apron. She stood on my porch, looking more grown up than I remembered. Not because of makeup or clothes, but because of the way she held herself, eyes steady, shoulders square. She was no longer a child caught between parents. She was choosing sides, and she chose mine. You ready to cook? She asked, a genuine smile on her face. I've been ready since 1983, I said, opening the door wide. We made chicken and dumplings from scratch. She peeled the carrots too thick and dropped the measuring spoon into the flour, but I didn't care. She laughed at herself, wiped her hands on her jeans, and asked questions like she actually wanted to learn. I watched her stir the broth while humming along to the radio. And for a moment, I forgot what month it was. I forgot about the envelope, about the betrayal, about Ethan and Brittany and their retirement home scheme. All I saw was her. When dinner was done, we ate together at the kitchen table. No fancy china this time, just 2 chipped plates and mismatched glasses. The sun poured through the window like an old friend. We didn't speak much while we ate, and we didn't have to. Some silences are a blessing. After we finished, she helped me wash the dishes. She stood next to me, shoulder to shoulder, our hands wet and wrinkled in the soapy water. "Grandma," she said softly, her voice hesitant. "Are you really never going to talk to Dad again?" I dried a plate and set it on the rack. "I didn't say never," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "But forgiveness takes more than an apology. It takes change. I don't think he knows how to change. And that's not my responsibility," I said. "My job was to raise him. What he does with what I gave him, that's on him now." She nodded, but I could tell it still sat heavy in her chest. "You love him," I said. "And that's okay. But don't let love blind you to the truth. People who love you can still hurt you. And people who hurt you don't always deserve a second chance just because they share your blood." She looked at me with those clear, honest eyes and said, "That's why I'm here." That night, I showed her the garden. The azaleas were blooming, their delicate petals a vibrant burst of color in the fading light. The moon was low and wide, casting silver across the flower beds. We sat on the porch swing and rocked slowly as the night settled in. I told her stories about her grandfather, how he used to whistle while fixing the roof, how he fell off a ladder once and landed in the rose bush, cursing up a storm until I handed him a glass of iced tea. She laughed until her stomach hurt. It was the kind of night I thought I'd lost forever. Later, after she left, I went to my room and opened the drawer where I kept the two letters, hers and mine. I reread them both, one written in fear, the other written in love. Together, they told the full story. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a new letter to myself. "Dear Mildred, you are not what they called you. You are not old and in the way. You are not confused. You are not a burden. You are the root. You are the keeper of stories. You are the woman who remembered herself just in time. Don't forget again. Not ever." I folded it and placed it with the others. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at the dining room table with the newspaper. Not the digital kind, the real one, the rustling pages a comforting sound. I circled an ad for community storytelling at the local library. "Seniors welcome. Bring your voice, your truth, your experience." I smiled. Later that week, Michelle called me. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I am," I affirmed, my resolve unwavering. She clicked her pen on the other end of the line. "All right. I've updated the will. Olivia inherits the house, the savings, the rights to your memoirs, if you ever write one." "I'm already working on the title," I said, a playful spark in my voice. "How's this, the day I was supposed to disappear?" She laughed. "That'll get some attention." "Good," I said, looking out at my peaceful garden. "Let the world see what happens when you try to bury a woman who still has fire in her bones." On Saturday, I saw Brittany's SUV pass my street again. She didn't stop this time. Maybe she'd finally realized I wasn't going anywhere. Or maybe she knew she'd lost the battle she never imagined I'd fight. Either way, she drove off. And I stayed right where I belonged. In my house, in my power, in my name. Not Mildred the patient. Not Mildred the dependent. Just Mildred Carter, mother, grandmother, survivor, and the woman who ate alone on Mother's Day only to uncover the truth and make sure no one ever erased her again.